Earlier this month, the city of Orillia took a significant step of declaring a food insecurity emergency, a move that highlights the growing crisis facing many residents. According to the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, nearly 1 in 3 households in Simcoe County, including Orillia, are struggling to access adequate food. But what does this declaration actually mean? How did the city arrive at this decision, and what are the root causes and possible solutions to this issue? To get a deeper understanding, I spoke with Jay Fallis, Orillia's Ward 3 councillor, about the scale of the crisis, the strategies being considered, and the steps local government, community organizations, and residents can take to address food insecurity. Here is that conversation. First of all, thank you so much, Jay, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak, for having me. This is really wonderful.
So today we are talking about food security. So, according to Orillia is part of Simcoe County, and according to the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, about 30% household in Simcoe County, which also includes Orillia, are facing food insecurity. And the problem is not only in Orillia and Simcoe County, but it's pan Ontario, it's pan Canadian problem, and there has been many reports recently that the demand for food from food banks has been growing. In light of that, Orillia declared food emergency. So before we get into the nitty-gritties of the problem, can you just touch on what is what seems to be the bigger problem? I believe there was a report that was published and there was finding from the report. So can you just explain what is the bigger problem when it comes to Orillia and food security?
Was just the impact on mental health that food has. And I believe it was from a documentary. I think it was Super Size Me, but don't quote me on this. But I do recall an example where an American school had it was a high school, had one of the worst grades in the state. And one change they made was offering a free lunch and breakfast program. And after that implementation, grades totally flipped, and they became one of the highest grade averages in the state. And it shows you how food can seem so one-dimensional in the sense that you eat. Once you eat, it's over, and you've fulfilled that kind of need. But it goes a lot deeper than that. If you don't, it's not just you eat or you don't. If you don't eat, your mental health, your cognitive functions takes a real hit, and that impacts your life as well. So there's definitely a lot of pieces to that. So yeah, as you had mentioned, there was a declaration of emergency last week, and it was the health unit that brought forward the suggestion. They've been collaborating with a lot of different community leaders and the Sharing Place, which is our local food bank in Orillia. And the message was very clear that there needed to be action taken. As you suggest, it's province-wide, it's countrywide, but certainly the impact is very much felt in Orillia. You're mentioning the county there, and within the county, which does have a very high percentage of those with challenges around food access, Orillia has the highest, I believe, the highest unemployment rate throughout the county, and also one of the highest rates of poverty. So of that demographic of our Simcoe County, Orillia is definitely hit the hardest. The other notable statistic that I do remember the Sharing Place alluding to was in 2011, they suggested that they were maybe servicing around 14% of Orillia's population. Today, they think it's around 31%, which is pretty significant. That's almost 1 in 3 Aurelians that are going to the food bank. And that's those that are choosing to go. There's probably many that could use it, but choose not to for a variety of reasons. So it's certainly we are facing a lot of challenges in Orillia.
So in terms of population, how much is the population of Orillia? I'm just trying to understand where does it stand with the biggest city in biggest city Barrie, and in terms of population, and what are the different sources of industries and employment in Orillia?
Really is about 34,000. And we're an hour and a half north of Toronto. So smaller community, but we're very tight knit. And it's really a kind community that way. We have several different industries. Some of our bigger employers are actually the OPP, Lakehead University, and the city itself as well. We do have a few industrial institutions, Kubota being one, Leadbetters being another big employer within the community, but it's certainly diverse that way. The other notable, interesting factor with Orillia is that we have a very strong arts and culture community and industry. So there's a lot of art galleries within Orillia, some major performance venues too. So it's quite a colorful mix, but certainly despite those unique factors, we do have a big portion of the population that is hit by these challenges.
So in terms of food insecurity, do you know, are there any specific groups that are affected more or less? Senior citizens, for example, or
Hmm.
single mothers, or any different? Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I believe the report specifically alluded to women being impacted, so single parent mothers being heavily impacted, but of course, definitely demographics that are facing standard economic challenges would be heavier hit. So, yeah, seniors would fall into that category. I'm sure those that are in ethnic minorities as well, religious minorities would also fall in. So, yeah, certainly, I wouldn't want to suggest that it's only those groups, but I would imagine those are some of the heaviest hit.
And given you have Lakehead University, so I believe there will be sizable international student population as well.
Yes, that's an excellent point. We do have a very big international student population, not only with Georgian College, but with Lakehead as well. So those two institutions basically lead to having this sizable student population, and as a result, but yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There would be many students dealing with these challenges as well.
What would it practically declaring an emergency? So first, if we can talk briefly about how the council arrived at that decision, and in practical terms, how that would, declaring emergency, would that unlock special powers and resources that the town can use? Can you start with how the council reached the decision to declare the emergency?
The question around why, right off the bat, it does really drive home the need for more supports. And the actual motion itself identified a couple different facets. So this around living wage, support for mental health services, support for more affordable housing, guaranteed livable income as well, all being important elements that were identified. And this is the message that we send to the province and to the federal government saying, we need these supports. So it really drives home that message at the higher levels of government. For ourselves as well, it does give us a clearer picture in terms of how needed some support locally is. And so we'll certainly be considering this as we go into our budget deliberations into fall 2025. That said, this is kind of a moving initiative. So what we might get from this year, it might evolve into next year and years after. So it's both a stepping stone, but a big kind of message to the higher levels and to ourselves that we need to act on this.
I believe strategies and action there have been Orillia poverty reduction strategy and Orillia area community food strategies. Those two strategies, I believe, advocates are asking to implement. So in terms of how those how the council envision those strategies to be implemented, and in terms of funding the budget, any expectations from the province or from the federal government?
Yeah, and certainly a lot of different facets to this. The other big one being our affordable housing action plan as well that we'd want to consider in this grand scheme. But I think the message that all of these different action plans drive home is the need for support for services to help those that are low income. And it can look very different depending what area you're focused on. In line with that conversation too, we've also been discussing making adjustments to our transit system to make it more affordable. We've talked about reducing our general rate as well as creating a seniors discounted rate on a monthly basis. So those two factors as well are part of some of these different strategies. It's interesting because with all of these different strategies going on, you kind of have to look at it holistically and consider, what are some, by implementing a reduced transit fee, does that have a positive impact on food insecurity within our community? And I think it would, but it's a question of what kind of objectives, what are the best objectives to go for first, and what are the most impactful?
So from what I understand is the focus is on short-term policies right now, because people need immediate assistance if they're struggling to put food on the plate. That is the first priority. But then how does that tie with the long-term strategy in the long run? How do you see that giving people more support? How does the council plan to do that?
When we're talking about each of these different facets, you might look at food insecurity as it can be very much focused on the day-to-day with, are we going to get this individual a meal on this day? And there's different ways of zooming out and looking at the long term. So one really interesting concept that had come up was our neighbor, Rama First Nation, actually has a community farm that they've been they not just support, but they own the property. They actually employ the individuals to farm it. And the Orillia City Council actually just met with members of Rama First Nation a few days ago. And this was one of the topics that came up, kind of getting a sense for how does this program work and what are the different elements to it. And the councillors really did speak highly of it, said it was a very bold initiative to start, but it's been quite a positive impact on the community, not only ensuring that there's really great food available locally, but also that the food that is available is affordable. And they said a lot of the products, all the products that are farmed, go right back into the community and are sold at a very minimal rate so people can afford them. So, in that sense, you're not just feeding a person for a day, you're creating a system that can feed a community for years. And so that I think you're right on that when we're declaring an emergency, yes, it's right now. How are we going to feed the average person on the street tomorrow? But it's how do we create a system that's going to be better for our community in the long run?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting point. We talked about Rama First Nation, and you know, because what we are seeing right now is, as you mentioned, there is availability of food. There is a lot of food. There is no dearth of food, right? But the problem is people can't afford it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Look, you go to supermarket, they are full, right?
That's
So
true. There's food. Yes,
there is
absolutely.
food everywhere. So it's very, this indigenous initiatives, they understand not only the problem but the solution in terms
Mm.
of a community and how to help the community with their resources, because Simcoe County is
Hmm.
one of the biggest county in terms of the land area. A lot
Hmm.
of, or most of the area is farmland. So many cities, many towns can leverage that, and work with the community to put the food uh, content.
Absolutely. I was going to say on that point, so it goes into the topic of food waste. And for viewers, I'm a big fan of John Oliver, who's a comedian, and he does a great special on food waste in the United States, breaking down what are some of the challenges with it and how or is it not divertible to those that really need it if it's just going to go to waste. In our local area, I know our food bank has done a very good job in terms of making efforts to create relationships with different stores throughout the community, and will regularly collect a lot of food that isn't sold. But yeah, that said, there's always certainly opportunities for trying to create more information, trying to create more awareness. And At the end of the day, uh, if if there's ways of making that line of going from diverting something from waste and going to a plate, it's worth exploring. So yeah, it's certainly a good point that there's a lot of food that we have in our community that's just it's not about it not being there, it's just not accessible for the average individual because of the cost.
And there has been, news recently that a lot of food is thrown out because
Hmm.
they want to sell food at a certain price. If they
Hmm.
give away the food, the demand and people will stop buying food at the higher prices. But then also there is another issue when it comes to food security, insecurity, that a lot of people ignore, and you touched upon it a little bit, is a lot of people having full-time job can't afford the food, because with the minimum wage that we have in Ontario, in Canada, is
Hmm.
there is a difference between minimum wage and the livable wage. So can you talk
Hmm.
a little bit about how does that factor in? Because there is an argument that, oh, people are just lazy, they need to work more. If they work more,
Hmm.
they will have more money. So can you just talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know, so I regularly will have conversations with those that deal directly with our homeless population, for example. And one thing that's continued to me in those conversations is how difficult homelessness can be for an individual, how much work it takes just to collect some of these, to collect OW or to get food day to day. And so when in my head, food is something, it's not something that you like, yeah, you have to work to get. It's you're a human, you need food to live. We need to make sure that there's food on your plate, essentially, as a society. And so I think there's uh, although there's certainly some cost to that, there's a great deal of benefits as well.
Just in terms of resources from local businesses, charitable organizations, and community groups.
Mhm.
So is the city council, how the city council is working with different community group, non-profit in Orillia, and how to solve this particular issue?
So the city's been uh, supporting in different ways. I think I would certainly recognize, and I know there's many community members that would recognize that we have a long way to go. So some of the things off the bat that really come to mind. One is we do have a food. It's a Orillia Access on sustainability working group specifically for food access. And so that is a committee that does work within the city. And we've regularly been receiving reports and information from that group. The city will support in different ways, such as supporting organizations directly. So one thing that the motion mentioned was Information Orillia's Tax Clinic, and that's something that the city has been directly supporting over the past few years. So these types of indirect supports are certainly or direct supports to these organizations that administer help to those that are low income are certainly huge. The other thing that the city has been progressing on to some extent is our community gardens. We've actually developed two new community gardens in the last 2 years, and we've also built up a third existing community garden. And so that's another area where we're kind of providing more access to different food opportunities. So in that way, I think there's certainly some successes we can point to at the city where the city's directly supporting. But there's no doubt that there's a lot of room to grow. And I think this declaration is certainly a good starting point.
Yeah, does this declaration unlocked any specific help from the province and the federal government
It
to reach
doesn't.
out?
It, from my understanding, it wouldn't really necessarily unlock anything, but it is a very important advocacy tool in terms of saying we're in this desperate scenario, and in order to solve this scenario, we're going to need the resources in relation to this. I think it also gives a commitment to our community that we're taking this matter seriously. And so no direct resources, but certainly a powerful advocacy tool.
Because city of Barrie, you might know, declared state of emergency when it comes to encampment. So
Yes.
now they are taking
Mhm.
actions against the encampments, clearing out the encampments. We have been doing the series, and what we heard from different advocacy group community leaders is cry for support. City has also
Mhm.
written a letter to the provincial and federal government asking them for help in with respect to that. So that's what I was wondering.
Mhm.
Have the city council Orillia City Council reached out to the provincial government or the federal government asking for, this is the situation, we need help, and
Mhm.
how, like, laying out the plan for help.
Just to be clear for those watching, many will already know this, but Barry's declaration very different from Aurelia's
Yeah.
in that it's leveraging different tools that it has to basically intervene in certain scenarios and more frequently as it pertains to the homeless population. Um, uh, very, of course, very controversial decision for Barry to undertake that. This is much more looking at trying to support those not just homeless individuals within Orillia, but many housed individuals too that are in desperate need. And so we have directed this letter to the province. So it's certainly clear what the ask is, but it really does. I think it falls on us to continue to refine what we're looking for. Yes, we've said that it's an emergency. Now we have to really clarify what is our plan going forward, and also how does the province support that? Because it's province and federal government, because both are needed if we want to meaningfully tackle this challenge.
Yeah, thank you. And so in terms of success, because this is, very, I would say, in Simcoe County, I haven't heard any other council, let alone trying to solve the problem, but acknowledge the problem. There is hesitancy to acknowledge. In Canada, given Canada is, developed country, it's rich country, so there is hesitancy in acknowledging that we have people who are unable to put food on the table. That's kind of people, many politicians, many leaders feel that that's accepting the fact that Canada has problem. Not not many people want to accept that. So that's one of the things I come across talking to you is acknowledging the problem. And many say that's the first step towards solving the problem. So in terms of the success, how what metrics, what targets do you think, because it's just been a few days since the emergency has been declared, so are there any talks about what are the metrics that the the city town might consider in terms of the success? If we achieve this, then we can consider we have achieved success comes to reducing food insecurity.
Really good question. I think it comes down to, are we reversing the trend? Because as mentioned, in 2011, it was 14% of Aurelians that were accessing or needing access to the food bank. And as we are given to understand, it's up to 31%. So if, you know, the metric is if we can reverse that trend and bring it down to, I mean, 2011 levels were bad enough. We need to really reverse it to get ourselves out of the situation we're in, but at least to receive some statistics that are showing we're improving that scenario on that front. I think that would be a good indicator. And the question is, though, what's going to be that magic thing that makes that adjustment, and it's gonna need support, as I say.
So just last few questions. How often, you say 14% 2011 level, that's at least the near term target. So how often council plan to go back, you know you have proposing a plan, implementing a plan, and then how often you are going to go back, visit the plan, and check the numbers, how that progress would look like.
That's a good question. I would say I think we're still in development. I think there's and it's always an evolution. Those particular statistics I was citing were from the sharing place, and they were looking at their usage numbers. I think in order to get an adequate read, the best thing we can be doing is listening to those that are directly dealing with those within the population. So the sharing place, making sure that as they identify problems and solutions, we listen to what's being said there. I think that can make the real difference.
What are the barriers and what are the risks when it comes to implementing this plan? So are there what are the biggest obstacles that you see that might derail the plan, or what are the obstacles that you think needs to
Hmm.
tackle along the way that can ensure the success?
Yeah. Funding obviously is huge. Um, I think mentality too, an understanding that, as I say, it's for some this goes without saying, but this kind of universal agreement that every one of us, doesn't matter who we are, deserves to have food on a as needed, essentially. And I think if our society can come to that understanding, I think that's huge. It's the mentality piece that is also big. It's not we need the funding, but we need the general population to say we need that funding to ensure that standard is met. I think also it's really interesting, just from my understanding in conversations with members of the public, is sometimes it's just a lack of information. People just naturally assume that everyone has, like we're living in Canada, that the social supports exist, so that if someone does fall on hard times, there is the support there needed to live their lives. And what this emergency declaration is really informing people of is that's not actually the case. We need a lot more support to ensure that people can live adequately, and that they can count on food on their table on a regular basis. Yeah, I would say funding, general mentality, but also getting the information out there that the support is needed too.
Yeah. So, and in terms of uh, so when do you say no, the plan is under consideration? So when you see the implementation, when do you see the plan, the help will be implemented on the ground? What is the timeline in near term, like let's say few months?
Again, I think it'll really depend on council and what types of priorities they put forward. We can get things done quickly if it's top of mind at the budget table. Uh, that said, there'll be a lot of projects if we do go down this road of really taking this seriously and implementing some different things. What type of timeline is required with each project? So I wouldn't say there's going to be a definite date where all of a sudden we're going to flip the switch. This is going to be years to come, a variety of different.
I also wanted to know a little bit about you as well.
Mm.
So we talked about the problem, but where does your passion for these issues come from? Can you just
Oh, that's a really
about
good
your
question.
background? little bit about your
Yeah.
education, and then how did you decide to become a counselor?
I would say in terms of food insecurity, certainly these different initiatives where it's focused on assisting those that are in low income, that's always been a passion project for me. Because I volunteer at the Lighthouse, I volunteered at the Warming Center, and just getting to interact with some of the individuals that are facing these problems in the most dire settings really does drive home the need for us to take action. And I also see it as an like something with the right amount of resources and the right amount of determination can make big changes that can really have enormous impact on individuals. So I think that's where my passion for this particular issue lie. I know, so I go to St. Paul's in downtown Orillia at the United Church, and our church has actually been the host of the community fridge over the last 2 years. And thanks to Miles Odolazinski and some other individuals within the community. And just seeing that fridge and how consistently it's used, it's a spot where people can donate food. Anyone in the community, it's regularly filled up by different restaurants, and then anyone walking along can access that food. And the idea being that it takes the stigma out of food access. So anyone who needs it can access it. And just seeing how consistently it's used, how frequently it's filled up, the connections that it makes, but also the amount of support that it offers. It's something so simple, but just seeing that really gives me passion as well that this type of support and this type of project is really essential within Orillia.
Yeah, so just last question, and you talked a little bit about through your example, but what
Mhm.
people like us, who are fortunate to have, enough resources to put food on the table, like what regular people can do, how they can contribute to this issue, because food security insecurity has many, it has impact not only on physical health, it has impact on mental health, it has long term
Mhm.
impact on, especially on the family and the kids, where
Mhm.
how do they excel, how do they end up successful in their career. So what regular
Mhm.
people like us can do, to contribute and reduce this food insecurity issue.
In terms of things that we can do, um, there's always kind of the standard things cited that are really important, donating to the local food bank. And I remember a conversation with the former Sharing Place executive director who really said, if you can do your own food drive, that's the best case scenario. But yeah, any support uh, for the local food bank or for the local soup kitchen can really make a difference. It's I think when you really break it down, if we're trying to solve the problems that are impacting our society as a whole, it of course goes to we need to advocate at the higher levels of government. We need to make sure that the representatives not just hear this, but also take action on these challenges, these for ensuring that low-income individuals throughout Ontario, throughout Canada, get the support that they need to get themselves out of the situation that they're in.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Jay, for
Yeah,
your
no
time
problem.
and talking to me.
And
Thank you.
sorry, just a final note on that. Of course, low income individuals are
Mhm.
impacted, but a big portion of the population is too. So, yeah, everyone can benefit from adjustments of this nature.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, and explaining the issues and the solution and what the Aurelia Council is doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deepak. Real honor to join you.